talk about my new wreath? So it's not this wreath, but this is what I want. This is what I need. But Joann Fabrics does not have it, and they do not have it for a reasonable price. I tried several stores and simply just could not find it in stock. I could not order it online and get it shipped to me. So we are just going to buckle down, spend twice as much on supplies making my own version, and we're gonna see if it works out. So to recreate this guy, you need a wreath, air dry clay. I used some alligator clips that I got from Amazon. I ended up not using all this greenery. I don't feel like it needed it at the end of the day, but it's optional. Ribbon. Again, more ferns, because foresty. And different types of moss. So I just started by trying to find which way I wanted my wreath to face. Like, which side do I want to be up and down in the front facing part. And then I also tried putting my alligator clips on the branches to see if they fit and what the best way would be to put them in there. So if you're like looking for a real in-depth artistic process, I don't have one. Basically, you're watching a semi-creative adult play in clay. The only real tip I have for making these clay mushrooms is using water to achieve a real nice smooth look. Other than that, this was like a trial and error process. I didn't even use any reference photos. I basically just thought of mushrooms and went for it. Also, I would suggest some clay sculpting tools because I could not find mine, and I ended up using this plastic fork. It worked not too bad, but obviously you can see there's some struggle happening here just on this guy. But because the clay is so easy to work with, you just kind of just keep working on it, and I had so much of it that I wasn't worried with messing up. And if you mess up, you can just mush it all back together in one big lump. But that is if you don't let it dry. So here's my process of just making several forms, adding alligator clips to them, and I wanted to put like those tree-like fungi. I don't even know if it's a fungus or they're weird growths, but those like almost like little shelves that grow out of trees. I wanted those on my wreath. I thought those would look really cool, especially with the type of wreath I got, which looks more like branches rather than like grapevines. So basically I just kind of press them in, wrap the clay around each of the little branches to try and really hunker them in to the wreath and really make it look like it's growing out of them. Basically, you can just make a little ball of the clay and smash it in there and just start to form it. It was really easy and it achieved a really unique look. The original wreath that I'm basing this all off of didn't have these, so essentially it's not exactly me recreating this wreath anymore. It's me going with the inspiration of a mushroom wreath and just going to town with my own imagination. So in the middle of making this wreath, I just decided to make a cute little like desktop paperweight / decoration for my husband just of a little mushroom. He loves mushroom hunting. He goes every year with his family. And I just decided, well, I have the clay. I already made one that semi looks like one of those mushrooms. So I'm just going to go for it. So please excuse the very phallic, inappropriate looking version of it right now. I swear it will turn into a mushroom and not a penis of which you see right now. I did have a freak out because it looks so inappropriate. But I guess that's just how it is when you are making clay mushrooms. There's just no way getting around making things look phallic. It's just in their nature, I suppose. But I just kind of kept wetting it and like really pressed it into the rock so it had the same form. I decided to make the stem and then make the topper as separate pieces. Some of the mushrooms I made from one lump and formed it into a mushroom. Some I made like the stem and then the topper. I really don't know what I suggest, what's easier. Both have their pros and cons, and there's not much else I can tell you other than if you're shaping this type of mushroom, it helped, at least in my opinion, to make the top first because it was more convenient to place it on my thumb and make the texture and the ridges and all that stuff with the back end of this fork. Now, it came out, surprisingly well. Again, I didn't use a reference photo for these. I just kind of went off what I knew of what they looked like and just kind of did it.
That actually looks really good. Oh my
Painting these, let me tell you, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare, but I was super proud with it. Like, it looks like super cute, right? Especially considering I have never seen these mushrooms in my life. Because my husband has refused to take me mushroom hunting so far. But I just kind of kept with it. This one I decided to make as one piece. I mean, you've already seen this. I'm just kind of beating a dead horse. Here are clay covered hands making a little clay mushroom. Ta-da! Aren't you all entertained? So again, you can see like I wet my fingers to try and smooth over. It makes the clay so much easier to work with. It gives it a nice smooth finish, and I think it dries better because this clay sometimes I just feel like it's prone to a lot of cracking and has a lot of hairline cracks after it's dried. And I've noticed if I smoothed it over before letting it dry with water, it's less likely to have those breaks in it. But also you can kind of, depending on what type of paint you use, you can fix those cracks as well as you paint. So it's not a necessary tip, but it is a useful one just to keep in mind when you're working with this clay. Now, my favorite detail, even though I doubt anyone's going to notice them on my wreath, is I really liked adding the bottom mushroom texture, and I just used a broken piece of the fork. Had I used my sculpting tools, had I found them before starting this project, I think they would have looked even better, and I think it could have made it even more realistic. And I don't know, I feel like it adds a nice dimension. And maybe, yeah, it's not photorealistic. Maybe it's not exactly the right type of breed of mushroom that has this type of texture. But essentially, when you think of mushroom, I think the things that I created really speak true to that. And that's all I really cared about at the end of the day. Now, making the smaller capped mushrooms, I did kind of like making the caps first and try to stick them on top almost like puzzle pieces in a way, like forming them to their stems. Sometimes this worked, sometimes it didn't, and they would fall off, and I would just end up gluing them on after I painted them with tacky glue. To each their own. Crafters beware. I don't really know what else to tell you. I'm no expert. I'm just trying to make a wreath. So I was sculpting with my air dry clay out in the hot sun at noon, which was a bad idea. I do not recommend to anyone, especially if you are prone to sunburns. But in regards to the sculpting, it sometimes made things difficult because they dried out fast. So that's where that water also came in handy. It made the clay much more pliable. But if you're looking for a more speedy drying process, I highly recommend it. I decided to make another morel mushroom, which is, again, the type that you hunt, at least out here in the Midwest. I decided to make another one. I just wanted plenty of options for the wreath, but then I also thought these would make really adorable gifts, especially for my family, because they are avid mushroom hunters. I thought, well, maybe not like the paperweights like my husband's, but I can put them in little terracotta pots with some fluorofoam and some moss and maybe a cute little decorative sign or something. And they're just really sweet gifts that were really easy to make, but also special. And you can personalize them by color, by mushroom type. You can personalize the signs you want to make with them. I ended up giving them as gifts to friends and family, and they were very well received. That was my last bit of sculpting, and then in my next video for this series, I will be painting mushrooms, and I will be putting it all together for the final reveal. Don't miss it.